Hello there, everybody on the YouTube as well. Welcome to Smelly Zoval's, or in this case, Time Lord Zoval's Redemption Arc. We are on a journey to show Zoval what exactly he's been trying to do, what he's been trying to destroy, and how he's been a very naughty boy in trying to do so. Last time we did Mr. Pandaria, which left us with a defeated War Chief Garrosh Hellscream, and instead of taking the War Chief's life, as we've done countless times with other bad guys, in this case they decided to do something quite new, quite interesting, which is place him on trial. Which was rather new for the story of Warcraft. So we got a book called War Crimes, in which Thrall the Whisperwind, she was like the accuser, and she tried to get Garrosh the verdict of take his life, whereas miraculously, there was a Bane Bloodhoof who was trying to defend Garrosh. And as you might remember, Garrosh killed Bane's father, right? And honestly, it's an interesting concept. It's an interesting book. I wonder if it works for the Warcraft setting. Because they use terminology that's quite out there. But at the same time, I thought that the concept was just really interesting, as well as it was used as a great opportunity to get people up to speed on the story so far. Because in the trial, they use like an hourglass of time, one that we helped fill up in-game on the Timeless Isle. And with it, they showed like visions of the past. So for those who hadn't caught up on the story of Warcraft so far, they got an opportunity to witness like, okay, this is what happened in the past. So Garrosh is placed on trial, blamed for a lot of things, even blamed for like the Dragamok clan enslaving Alexstrasza and forcing her to breed. That was placed on Garrosh's shoulders because he worked with the Dragamok clan. So that was interesting. But ultimately, the trial didn't matter much for two reasons. One, the August Celestials, among them Shwen, the White Tiger, who's behind us, they were going to judge him, Garrosh, as, you know, they were never going to give him the death penalty. Because in their mind, as long as there's life, there's the possibility for change. And in that regard, Christy Gul'dan did a really good job in making you believe that, okay, maybe, just maybe, Garrosh could change. And there are some really sick lines in the book as well, like where I think he tells Anduin, like, your mother should have miscarried. So it goes pretty dark as well. So that's one part. The August Celestials would have always given him the conviction of, you know, life and change. And the second part is that before the trial is concluded, Kairos Dormu uses the Hourglass in order to set Garrosh free. And interestingly enough, in order to create a distraction, there's the infinite dragonflight that attacks the trial. And this seemingly was the build-up of the birth of the infinite dragonflight. How else would Kairos have allies amongst the infinite dragonflight, right? And a lot of things that he said as well were very infinite dragonflight-esque. But that never came to be. Instead, Garrosh goes to this alternate Draenor, and in-game, we didn't see any of this. One of the interesting choices that they made for telling the storyline is that you didn't find out what happened to Garrosh until when you're done leveling. When you're done leveling, you find out, like, oh, Garrosh landed in Draenor, and he betrayed Kairos and all that. Meaning that the whole introductionary, the Dark Portal turning red, and UBRS and all that, you weren't really explaining in-game what was going on. Thankfully, there was a channel, youtube.com/noble87, that did talk about the story of War Crimes and the book and the novel and explained like this was happening. Otherwise, you'd have to read the book in order to figure out what was going on. And I will say, from the YouTube side of things, Warlords was a really good time for my channel because not a lot of people knew what the heck was going on. And that wasn't exactly their fault. Because I remember during BlizzCon, where they announced Warlords of Draenor, and people asked Madsen, like, okay, you're talking about going back in time and the Dark Portal turn red and time travel, like, how exactly does that work? And I remember him sitting there and going like, yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out, don't worry, we'll figure it out. And it's like, well, that's definitely a choice. So, yeah, they figured it out. But we're going to be flying to the Blackrock Mountain, where we can talk a little bit more about what happened next. But it was definitely an interesting announcement. So a lot of people started looking up more lore videos. And I think this was also around the time of the Warcraft movie. Crosshater, thank you so much for the 110. Which didn't exactly help. Because... Your enemies. Am I in the wrong side? Can I use your portals? I think I'm a horde, aren't I? Yeah, I am. Sorry. It's nice that we don't attack each other, though. That's cool. What was I saying? Oh, yeah, I was saying lore videos, people checking it out. Oh, yeah, the Warcraft movie. So, it was a bit of a tie-in. The alternate Draenor was a good way for people to familiarize themselves with the original Horde, with the original orcs that played a part in the Warcraft movie. But, as Bookfalos mentions in the chat, they've made it very clear that the movie universe is its own universe. With its own books, its own setting, its own little twists and turns. Meaning that we now have 3 versions of Draenor. We have original Draenor from like Warcraft 1 with the opening of the Dark Portal and the orcs coming in, like that original world. Then we have alternate Draenor from the expansion Warlords of Draenor. In which almost the same, like there wasn't a Garrosh, for example, that was one of the major differences. And of course, Garrosh manipulated events as well. And then there was movie Draenor. But that part people didn't really catch up on. So that was interesting. Yeah, I mean the Warcraft movie, I love what they've done when it comes to like bringing the Warcraft universe to life. That was really, really well done. Like seeing Stormwind and seeing the Dark Portal and whatnot. Visually, I love the Warcraft movie. It's just for me as a movie, it doesn't really work, and that's mainly for the pacing. And one thing that comes to mind is that they're sitting around the campfire, and out of the blue, Garona tells Khadgar, like, you want to f*** me. And Khadgar's like, excuse me, what? And Garona's like, you don't want to f*** me, I'd break you. I get broken by others, but I break you. And then they start talking about their backstories. Up to the point where Lothar goes like, well, now that we have our backstories out of the way, we can move on and we could do something else. And it's like, huh? The f*** just happened. As well as Lothar and his son, that his son had to mention like, oh, Dad! And the moment that his son called him Dad, I was like, you're gonna die, aren't you? You're totally gonna die. And of course, his son died. It's like, yeah, okay. I kind of saw that one coming. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to set up for going into Draenor. Because we've done the trial, we've done war crimes. There was a connection between Garrison and Warlord Zayla. And Warlord Zayla of the Dragonmaw, she rides around on Galagras, which is like descendant and offspring of Galacrons, which you might remember from Dragonflight, the one that Iridicron sucked dry. So that's kind of cool. And for a while, we were kind of speculating or hoping that maybe there was more between Zayla and Garrosh in order to keep like the Hellscream bloodline going. Unfortunately, that wasn't really a thing. And we kind of killed her before anything else could happen, I guess. Unless there's a little orphan running around now, a little orphan Hellscream. Maybe that could be interesting. Yeah, so the idea was that maybe Zayla and Garrosh were more than just allies, and that, you know, there could be an offspring of it. But I'm pretty sure that timeline-wise it didn't work, because Zayla would end up in a UBRS remake, where eventually with Garrosh, his release, he did a whole bunch of things in Alternate Draenor, and eventually the Dark Portal turned red, and the so-called Iron Horde invaded Azeroth, right? With it, we also had Zayla on our side, who was still Team Garrosh, and she occupied the Blackrock Mountain, where they put up a big old... I don't want to call it a Death Star. It is an Iron Star. That's what it was called, because everything was called Iron. Iron Horde, Iron Star, blah, blah, blah. And they aimed it at Stormwind. And so the Alliance went in to clean out base, and I think the Horde went in as well for some reason. Now, as you can see, the Dark Portal is still green. And I kind of wonder how they explained that the Dark Portal turned red. Like, could we no longer go to Outland? Or was just the portal to Outland closed all of this time? And I somewhere in my memory, it tells me, shut up, don't ask questions. I think that was the answer. Okay, so please let me change time. Yes, thank you. See, you can change time here. Why can't you just change time at the Undercity? Don't forget to accept the quest from Khadgar. You can't get in. I can do whatever I want. I don't need no smelly Khadgar. I don't need no smelly Khadgar. There he is. So here we have the Dark Portal turned red. So the pre-event, I'm pretty sure, was the UBRS remake. It was like the dungeon. And then the Dark Portal turned red. Before this, we had a really cool series, in my opinion, which is Lords of War. If you've never seen Lords of War on the YouTube before, I would highly recommend to go check it out. Basically, they go into the backstories of some of the warlords that we meet on Alternate Draenor. So a Grommash Hellscream and his indomitable will, or a Kil'jaeden Deadeye, or a Marad. In this case, our Marad, not alternate Marad, our Marad. And we learned about Marad that he was at Shefref and that he abandoned his post in order to claim vengeance, and that it always had haunted him as, you know, his kin died on Draenor. And now he had a second chance to make things not so much right, but he could stand up for this Draenor. He could stand up for these Draenei. And so he asked Varian Rin, as he spoke about the warlords, like, sign this treaty, like, sign this declaration of war, let's go. And Varian agreed with him. Unfortunately, Marad's story was a bit cut short on Alternate Draenor, in my opinion. But hey-ho, what can you do? This was also the one where all of a sudden Khadgar showed up. And Khadgar decided to use his magic to make himself look awesome. Before this, there's old school Khadgar that was in Shefref. Like an old man who was in the comics, kinda crusty. And big-ass beard. And at some point, he just showed up like this again. And all of a sudden, everybody started to call him Dadgar. You know? He does his hair, shaves his beard. And now he's Dadgar. He also wields Atiesh. Whereas we also got Liadrin, who wields Quel'Dalar, if I remember right. So all of a sudden, these legendary weapons were also handed out to the people. But hi-ho, either way. Dark Portal turned red. Azeroth had to rise up like the days of the Sons of Lothar. So like the days where the original Horde came into the Dark Portal, we also had to have everybody rise up and take flank and jump through. But this time, of course, we had the support of our Horde. Like, it was not one and the same. We also see quite a few named NPCs here, like people amongst the community. Yeah, they don't do this anymore. They don't really do that anymore. And the reason why they don't do that anymore, I'll let you look that up yourself, but things happened. I think Krendor is now the last named NPC in the game, and I don't think they're going to do anyone else after that. So here we go, into Alternate Draenor. And I think it's... Oh, the music! We were stuck in Frostfire Ridge for months during beta testing with nothing but this song to keep us company. Ah, so good. Beautiful. The Mented are indeed an offspring. So, the Mented and whatnot, Gary, they're like EVs from Pokemon. So, the baseline is an Akir. And if you have an Akir under the influence of Yashirash, they become a Mented. Akir under the influence of Kafun become Karaji. Akir under the influence of N'Zoth just kind of stay Akir. And Akir under the influence of the old god Yaxaron, the one from Northrend, they become Nerubians. So welcome to Alternate Draenor. We kind of skipped over the introductionary part. So let me set up the stage. Garrosh is released from the trial and sent back in time, I think like 30 years-ish, to an alternate reality by Kairos Dormu. Time travel magic, right? And they picked this reality because in this one there was no Garrosh Hellscream. So it would be a perfect moment for him to slide in there and get some things going. Their plan, it was not just Kairos' plan, there was also the Black Dragon Rephion. And their plan was, Rephion had seen the Legions return. And so he wanted, first of all, the Alliance to dominate the Horde and take over and have like a unified front to save the world. But those plans backfired in Mr. Pandaria and he was quite upset. So he decided, you know what? If we're not going to get a unified faction, in this case the Alliance, I'm just going to make a big-ass Horde. And we're going to use that Horde to stand with us against the Legion. And so the concept came of sending Garrosh to an alternate reality, form the Iron Horde, and have that Horde stand with us against the coming Legion. But obviously Garrosh was not down with any of those plans. He was not down with for the defensive Legion. He was not down being manipulated by Kairos. Garrosh was going to do what Garrosh wanted to do. And Garrosh wanted revenge. Yeah. He wanted revenge on Azeroth. Those big mean Azerothians that kicked his booty. And he would have his Iron Horde, but this Iron Horde would stand with him against the Azeroth that kicked his ass. So the moment they land, Garrosh murders Kairos Dormu. Has like a shard from the Hourglass of Time. He stabs Kairos with it. And then he goes out and he goes and meet his daddy, Gromar's Hellscream of the Warsong clan. But we gotta keep in mind that this is not the same clan as that he knew from back in the day. Like, this is an alternate reality. And Garrosh is able to warn them about certain things. He's able to manipulate certain events from happening or from not happening. In this case, he shows Gromash what happens on Azeroth, but only an X amount of information. I believe he cuts off the vision at the moment that Thrall rises up, so that Gromash only believes like Garrosh's version of his hero of his father, the Horde dominating the world, right? And so with Gromash at his side, they go out to form the Iron Horde, and they know about Gul'dan. They know that Gul'dan has the Legion whispering in his ears. They know about the Pit Lord Manaroth. They know because in our timeline, the Horde got corrupted by drinking the demonic blood. It was Gromash who stepped up first to take that power because he had ego, right? Like, as much as Gromash was a hero, he wasn't perfect, and he wanted to be the first to have more power. Not knowing, of course, that they were going to be enslaved, but he did want that power. But this time around, he was warned. And he asks Gul'dan, "And what, Gul'dan, must we give in return?" To which Gul'dan says, "Everything." And now, I don't know a lot about selling things to people, but I'm pretty sure that if you want to convince people to join you and do what you say, you don't go, "Everything. Join the dark side, Anakin. We've got demon blood." I'm kind of wondering why Gul'dan was so honest about things. He could have just, he could have just lied. But nah, he was very open about it. To which Gromash was like, "Nah, I'm not going to drink this." And then Manaroth steps out of the shadows and he's like, "Why then did you all show up? Just to watch you die?" And then, of course, they got the whole... They got the plan ready to go. Garrosh has taken technology from our universe into this one, like information on the Iron Star. He has like really good memory, and they use that technology to bring Manaroth low. And in one of the sickest cutscenes that they've made, there's a callback to Warcraft 3, where in our reality Gromash was killed by the explosion that followed after he struck down Manaroth. In this one, Garrosh is able to jump him out of the way. Gul'dan is like, "Oh, this was not our destiny." And Garrosh is just a line machine, and he's like, "Times change." Which is still so fucking cool. So he throws Gorhal to his daddy, and his daddy is like, "We will never be slaves, but we will be conquerors." And then the Dark Portal is being built, and they're going to use that shard that Garrosh has to link this reality to our reality. And so by stepping through the red portal, we go back in time. We go 30 years-ish, where this Iron Horde has now been formed. It's the Horde minus the demonic blood. minus the corruption pumping in their veins. And we have to take care of business. Yeah. So we go in, and in the introductionary scenario, which was unfortunately skipped, but we go through Tanaan Jungle. We find out that they've imprisoned Gul'dan and his Shadow Council, so Terangor and Cho'Gall. Alternate Gul'dan, right? They're locked away, so we have to release them in order to shut down the Dark Portal. Then we also use like an Iron Star to blow up the portal entirely, like basically disconnecting ourselves from Azeroth, similar to how the Sons of Lothar did that in Beyond the Dark Portal, to save Azeroth, to make sure that the Iron Horde, is not able to get in there. We then run into Gromush up on the mountain, who is like, rise up, sons and daughters of the Horde. Are you so eager for death? And we have to run for our lives. And what's really cool is that the Alliance and Horde, they get their own starting points and eventually come back together. And they stop doing this. I get why. Like, it saves development time and it saves story time and just give everybody the same thing. But for me, it gave me a big reason. It gave me a big reason to play both sides and to get both sides of the storyline. So I'm kind of hoping that one day to go back to it. It's the first stream image I saw of you. I not surprising that the amount of times that we spend in Frostfire Ridge during the beta times. Like, I have some good memories here. Howdy, everybody. Leodring having Quelstadar? Yeah. So here we are. And for Thrall, this is kind of trippy. So Thrall's parents died when he was a baby, right? So he never met his parents. He met Drakfar of our reality, but he never met his own parents, and that was going to change in this expansion. Now, they have recognized, or he has recognized in the most recent short story, that he realized, like, these are not my parents. But still, it was kind of cool to get to know them and interact with the Frostwolf clan, even if they are from an alternate reality, even if, it's not his Frostwolf clan. And here we would find out one of the biggest indicators for Warlords of Draenor, which is the little expansion that could. So Warlords had the introduction of the Garrison. And the Garrison, somewhat similar to player housing, but the Garrison didn't work. And I remember on launch day that I was playing my Alliance character, and I was one of the few people that was able to set up their Garrison and go into the rest of the questing experience. Meaning, I had thousands and thousands of people go into my chat and be like, yo, how are you able to play? We're all stuck trying to get our Garrison going. Because it gave them so much development trouble, which makes you wonder if said development trouble flowed over into the rest of the things, because they had some really cool ideas, some really cool concepts that they wanted to do in Draenor that just never really became a thing. So, for example, we're looking at here, this was supposed to be the Horde's capital city. Was it this one? Or was it the mining? Yeah. The Bladespire Citadel. And the idea was that you were going to liberate the Bladespire Citadel from the ogres, you were going to unite with the orcs, and that was going to be your base of operations. That's fucking sick. A really cool concept. On the Alliance side, you were going to do the same, but with Karabor, with the Black Temple, as we know it in our reality. But for some reason, they decided to not go with that. Even though, I remember like it was yesterday, development-wise, it was nearly done. Like, Karabor had some textures that needed to be put in there, but this was done. This was finished, and I'm like, why was that cut out? Weird. Farallon, yeah, became like a boat mission. Shafrath did not become a raid or a dungeon. The Ogre Empire was not a thing. Draenor, in my mind, is always like the little expansion that could. It had a lot of potential, it had a lot of promise, and didn't really go anywhere, unfortunately. I do notice that my add-on's not working, by the way. That's a shame. Oh well. So, story-wise, Draenor, the history of Draenor is that, like Azeroth, it also got a visit from the Titans, in this case, Agramar. But unlike Azeroth, Agramar realized, like, okay, Draenor, it does not have a world soul inside, a Titan soul. It does not have old gods on there. But he noticed that nature was too dominant on the planets. Whereas on Azeroth, the spirit inside has devoured the spirit of life, they call it, like the fifth element. Which meant that the elements were out of balance and very hostile on Azeroth. On this one, the opposite happened. The spirit of life was abundant. And so the others were like dominated and nature was everywhere. They were like Spotigar and whatnot. And Agramor looked at that and he was like, well, if I don't do anything, then this whole planet is going to be choked out by life. So I'm going to do what a Titan does best. I'm going to bring balance, right? I'm going to bring a little bit of order. So he created like a massive stone creature, which has a name. For the life of me, I do not remember it. But that stone creature fought with the big-ass plant creature. And then both of them kind of went kablooey and then started this whole evolutionary chain. So it was called... Was it called Gorgrond? Oh, okay. It was called Grunk. It was a stone creature. So it turned into like the Grun and into the Ogron. And it turned into the Ogres. And then the Ogres turned into the Orcs. So that all evolved from like the stone creature. It became smaller and smaller and smaller. And from the plant creatures, there were like the big Botani, who were then turned into like the smaller plant creatures that would take over your brains and like tentacles and whatnot. Into like the little plant creatures. Is there music? Yeah, there is. And by doing so, Agramor kind of gave a chance to the world to like grow and flourish, right? It turned into Gorgrond. There you go. Yeah, so these creatures, I think this one is called a Grun or an Ogron. It's like they're somewhat extinct now, the big ones, but they were like hunted to extinction. So from that, balance came to the world and life got a chance to grow. Then at some point, the Draenor showed up, and the Draenor were on the run from Kil'jaeden. But what's interesting is that this is an alternate reality, right? But they've made a really interesting decision when it comes to the lore of the Burning Legion and the Twisting Nether. Which is that... And if I ever make like a top 10 weird lore decisions videos, this is up there. They've decided that the Twisting Nether transcends realities. And so for those unaware, the Twisted Nether is basically the place where the demons come from, where the demons hang out. And in essence, it means that beings like Sargeras and the Burning Legion and Archimonde and Kil'jaeden, they transcend realities. So it's implicated that the Archimonde that we fought at the end of Draenor is our Archimonde that we saw in Warcraft 3. This one and the same. Because the Twisted Nether transcend realities. However, having multiple realities and then a domain that transcends it, not to mention time travel, causes a whole bunch of trouble. Personally, one of the major ones that I scratch my head about is that, okay, you have the Twisted Nether transcend realities, but you've got two Valens. How does that work? Does that mean that once you join the Burning Legion, all your individual copies across the multiverse become one? Does that not mean or indicate that there's an Archimonde out there that decided not to join the Burning Legion? Is he still out there? How does that flow in line with your description that alternate realities, if left alone, they vanish? How does that all work? Does that not mean that Sargeras has conquered a million different Azeroths if our Azeroth is the final one? Has he, like what is his goal up in here? And no, Zul, sorry, mate. We're doing the lore tour today. Like having alternate realities and the Twisted Nether transcended and all that. That does not work, and it's a really weird decision, but it's a decision that they made. Yeah, like, does that mean demons merge with the alternate selves? Like, this is in line with alternate copies being judged for the same actions in the Shadowlands. It's yeah, they did. Good shout, Dragon Boy. So what they did with the Shadowlands is that people asked, okay, how does that work for a for a Grommash, for example? You got our Grommash and you got alternate Grommash. Like, how do these souls get judged? And the Noozer explained it by saying that souls are part of a rope, and that in the afterlife they all become part of the same rope again, and then they're judged. Which, as well, makes no fucking sense, because that doesn't change the things you do in life. And as well as, like, Shadowlands lore. Anywho, back to alternate Draenor. The Draenei showed up as they were running away from Kil'jaeden and the Burning Legion, because Valen could see that siding with Sargeras was a really bad idea. So the Draenei landed on Draenor, and for a while things were great. But then Kil'jaeden found them again and corrupted the orcs into forming the Hordes. The war played out, all the good stuff. But of course, on this alternate reality, we do have certain things, certain moments that have been changed. As I mentioned, Garrosh stopped them from drinking demonic blood. That's one of the major big ones, giving us the setup. So here, not all the orcs are down with joining this so-called Iron Horde. And in this case, in Frostfire Ridge, we would learn all about the Frostwolf clan, who very much took a stand against allying in the Iron Horde, right? And this is paralleled in our reality. In our reality, Earthen also knew that embracing the Fel, magically aging their children, the corruption of the Horde, he knew in his heart of hearts that this was all bad. He knew it was bad, but what could he do, right? Like, rising up against the Horde would mean certain death. Now, even amongst the Frostwolf clan, not everybody agreed either. I believe one of their brothers joined, like, the Thunderlord clan, because they had, like, a fight with their father. And then there was, I think that brother was called Fenris. And then there was, so you got Earthen, you got Fenris, and then you got the one who sacrificed himself in Frostfire Ridge. Which I should know. Brother, what are you called? He has a name. And he's very much like, Earthen, we should fight, and we should murder them all. And Earthen is like, Grad. Wasn't their father called Grad? Because they called his own Geradar, right? Oh, God. Was he called Gerard? Hold. Trying to think now. Throne of Elements. Hold fast. Whatever. He was called Gerard. Let's go with it. Gnar. Thank you. He was called Gnar because their father was called Gerard. There we go. So his brother was called Gnar. And he was very much like Earthen. You know, we need to fight, we need to do this, we need to do that. And Earthen is like, no, we need to keep our people safe. What are you doing? Until ultimately, you know, they're forced to work together. We fight off against the ogres, we fight off against the Thunderlord clan. And eventually we culminate our story together in this pass, where the Iron Horde is marching into the lands. And Gnar sacrificed himself to hold the line as Drakvar calls upon the elements. And there was also this hint at the elements being that much stronger on this alternate Draenor rather than what they are back home. But I don't think they massively went deep into that. But there were hints at the elements just being a wee bit more powerful, which is kind of cool. So, ultimate sacrifice made. This whole army is wiped out. And the Horde would move on into Gorgrond. Gorgrond, originally in development plans, was going to have like a massive train track running through the entire zone. But development-wise, that didn't really work out, so they had some changes. This is the place where you can really see the battle between the earth and the nature side of things. Like the original story that I told you with Agramar showing up and making like the big-ass creatures. Here we can see plants versus earth fighting, trying to claim dominance. Excuse me. And here we would find a big part of the Iron Horde's production facility. Like this is where they would make the weaponry. The train was not there without a reason, right? Like transport the weaponry across the zones. And this is where we fought Blackhand ultimately in the Blackrock Foundry, I'm pretty sure. I'm trying to remember. Draenor does not have a Titan Spirit inside. No, it does not. I'm trying to remember. There was a comic about Orgrim Doomhammer. And Orgrim Doomhammer in our timeline, bestest buddies with Earthen. And Orgrim would be the one to expose the corruption amongst the Hordes. He would be informed by Earthen and Draka, like, listen, there's Gul'dan, there's the Shadow Council, is up to no good. Unfortunately, amongst Earthen's forces, amongst Orgrim's forces, there were like Gul'dan spies who murdered Earthen and Draka. But the information was passed on. And so Orgrim rose up, took care of business. Gul'dan had fallen into a coma because he was like inside of Medivh's mind at the time. But Orgrim took control of the Horde. And he tried to bring it back to the more honorable days that he knew his people to be. Now, unfortunately, he wasn't wise enough to keep Gul'dan on a closer leash. Over time, Gul'dan made like Death Knights and empowered ogres or whatnot, and then he betrayed Orgrim, which basically cost the Horde the war over Azeroth. And in this timeline, we never had a moment where Orgrim really rose up and took care of business. Instead, Orgrim was very loyal to the Iron Horde, despite Earthen telling him, like, you can step away. But Orgrim remained loyal to Blackhand, if I remember right. And then there was something about the Doomhammer. I'm trying to remember if they gave Doomhammer to Blackhand or not. Let's see the raid. Hang on. Nah. Don't think they did. There was something about him. Doomhammer gave the hammer back to the elements. Gave the hammer back to the elements. There was a comic. And if I... Like, Orgrim did something with the Doomhammer which made him, like, unworthy, if I remember right. And then Blackhand dipped his hands in the lava. And that's how he got his name, like, Blackhand. I would have to look up that comic again. Either way, Blackhand, quite the badass that we would eventually confront here. We would also deal with the Laughing Skull clan. There were all these different clans that we found amongst alternate Draenor. And again, it was very much a feast of remember these Horde of the past. That was basically the concept. Like, wouldn't it be cool if we could party with the orcs of old? And they were talking about concepts of finding like this ancient horn that would allow them to summon the Horde of the past. And ultimately they landed on the idea of going into an alternate reality. And here again, we see the battle between the Everbloom, between the nature side of things and the earth side of things. At some point we also roll up here with Rexxar and like this gigantic crystal. And I think there was also like a Titan relic here that we found. Like, ooh, Titan influence is cool. A beautiful, beautiful zone. One of the really cool things about leveling, what they did here, was they would give you like little upgrades you could pick. Like you could pick between one of the two upgrades, and that would be your ability through the zone. So in Nagrand, for example, they would give you a tank or a shredder or whatever. That was kind of fun. As well as Draenor had like a whole bunch of bonus experience zones. So leveling was really, really quick. Don't underestimate these plant creatures, by the way. They will use spores and mushrooms and stuff to take over your minds and turn you into plant zombies. They're not kind. They're not kind to the living. Like we have an infested behemoth over here. You do not want to be taken over by the plant people. Yeah, that's not chill. It's very much like... Yeah. Here we got the Botani. And what is cool is that when the Mega Orcs were recruited by the Hordes, a bunch of Botani actually came through the portal as well. So they're on Azeroth. They're doing something. Just who the heck he knows, right? Just trying to think if there was more about this area or not. Don't think so. Moving on into Talador, where, as I mentioned, there was the whole Shafref City. And Shafref City, in our timeline, was a big part of the war. You gotta imagine that eventually the Draenei, they figured out that the Horde was being manipulated, fell, corruption, and the Draenei tried to go to peace, tried to work things out, but it was just not happening. And at some point, they had to make an ultimate sacrifice at Shafref City, where they just left a bunch of the people inside of the city as the Horde laid siege, and they had to leave enough behind to make it believe like, okay, you've wiped out the Draenei. So only a handful of them could hide out in the Zangarmarsh and try to survive there. During that siege, the Horde also deployed the Red Mists. This is one of the moments in the lore where someone actively got disconnected from the light. Like, your conviction can disconnect you, but that's more like an emotional thing, a mindset. The Red Mist, as far as I'm aware, Dank, thank you very much for the Prime as well, is like the one moment in which we, lore-wise, actively have a disconnect from the light. Like, you're no longer able to use the light. And this is what pushed someone like Nobundo into wielding the elements as one of the first shaman of his people. So obviously, big city, big moment in the lore. People had a lot of hopes to like do something here, but unfortunately that wasn't really a thing. Plenty of demonic influences though. What we did see was Auchindoun. On Outlands, you'll know Auchindoun as like this blown up place where they summoned the musical elemental, or like the element of sound called Murmur. Here, Auchindoun is still very much intact, but Betrayal was waiting around the corner. So in the dungeon, we find out that, I want to say Talani, but I have to double check her name. She's like an acolyte, and she betrays us in the dungeon. And there was like a letter that you could find in, I think it was the inn, or like a follower mission. Come on, Brain, you got this. I think her child was kidnapped by the Iron Horde, and therefore she was forced to help them. They gave a reason as to why she betrayed the Draenor. I remember that much. I don't... The specific one is eluding me right now. Soulbind and Niami. And then there was... Oh, then there was Legion, where the Death Knights went into the Order Hall campaign and they did something with Soulbind and Niamis. That's where we learned it. That's where we fucking learned it. Yeah. I need to look this up now, because my brain is firing off. It's like, oh, there was a letter. Soulbinder Niami. The Death Knights of the Ebonblade retrieve Soulbind and Niami's essence from the Shadowlands, though it's not stated whether that refers to the main or alternate universe Niami. Well, actually, Warcraft Wikipedia, we found out by the Noosers Calling that souls just merge into one being, so, you know. So where is... There was a letter. Oh, there was an unnamed son. A letter from Exarch Muladar. That's it. I need that one. The letter begins, Dear Niami, it is regret that I must tell you that your son is amongst those kidnapped by the orcs. We fear the worst. Yeah, good job, Brain. Good job remembering. So yeah, there was a reason as to why Niami betrayed us. And in the dungeon, we also saw Terongor. And here, Terongor is still very much orc. You will probably know him as Terongor Fiend, the Death Knight in the Black Temple. And he was one of the first Death Knights that Gul'dan created out of human corpses during the Orcish Horde invasion. Right? Like, he used the soul of a Shadow Council of Terongor and put him into a Death Knight body. So they're not the same Death Knights as, for example, the Lich King would make. But they are still Death Knights. And in this reality, that would not be the fate of Terongor. Instead, he jumps down in Auchindoun. And he just starts to eat souls. Num, 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 num. And he starts to gorge and gorge and gorge some more. Until he became the epitome of Fatboss TV's logo. It just struck me that there's gonna be people out there that are like, what the hell is a Fatboss? There's gonna be people out there that have never seen a Fatboss guide before. Oh man, now I'm sad. Anyways, he ate a lot of souls and would later return in the Hellfire Citadel raid. We find out, like, oh, okay, we did not kill Terongor. He devoured souls. He became like a massive blob creature. It's like, oh, okay. Okie dokie. Can we show him? We can most definitely show him. There you go. Gorefiend. Oh, yeah. Look at that beaut. Oh, yeah. What else was there going on in these parts? I know that the Alliance and Horde came here together and they had like a whole quest line where they rolled around with an Iron Star and they took out a whole bunch of their forces. I think we also got a hint of the Arakoa. I think there was a bit of a taste of, okay, this was going to happen in Spires of Arak. Let's have a look-see. There's a Play WoW with an Xbox Game Pass in the future. Oh, yeah. It's been debunked by the Xbox Twitter. Oh, supposed to be accidentally, which is weird because it was automatically sent. Oh. Oh, okay. Yeah, I would be against WoW on the Xbox Game Pass. Right? Makes sense in my mind. Yeah, so we got a bunch of Arakoa running around here as well, and the Shattered Hands. So the Shattered Hands... the Shattered Hand got their names because they were fighting in the Ogre Arena. And at some point, one of them sacrificed their arm and replaced it with a hook. And then everybody was like, oh yeah, let's do that as well. And they kind of got the reputation of just doing whatever it took in order to secure victory. It's kind of cool. Karkaf Blade Fist. Yes, sir. That's the one. Maybe be able to play WoW without directly paying Blizzard would be cool. I'd still be paying Blizzard. I don't think necessarily they matter where the sub money comes from, through a Game Pass or through direct sub money. But I think that they have very smart people who look at how much money they make with the subscription-based model. And they will calculate, like, okay, is it in our favor to change that into a Game Pass, or do we still make enough money to stick with this sub model? That's what my expectation would be. So here we have Shadowmoon Valley. And this is where the Alliance starts their experience. So the Horde meets up with the Frostwolf clan, with Earthen and Draka. The Alliance meets up with Velen and the Draenor. They also meet Yrl, a brand new character introduced, which I am sure that they will in no way mess up going forward. Like, how can you? Finally, at last, a boss girl character that's actually interesting and powerful. Surely you won't mess this up, right? So again, here we set up Garrison, and we learn more about the lands. And Khadgar is fighting off against Gul'dan and the Shadow Council. He very much focuses on that. They try to take his life at some point. And then there is this universe's Corona. And Khadgar has history with our Corona. Like, they were both in the Tower of Medivh at the same time. They were very close together. So Khadgar wants to save Corona from Cho'Gall and Gul'dan's control, which they have over their minds. But in the process, the magical artifacts that they use get into the hands of one of the Watchers. I'm trying to remember her name. She shows up again in Legion. Cordana! Oh, good job, Brain. And Cordana gets corrupted instead and joins Gul'dan's side, which is whoopsie-daisy. Which would eventually, like in the next expansion, play a much bigger part as Cordana helps Gul'dan with like getting Illidan's body out of the Vault of the Wardens. And considering that she's a Warden, she's a big help with getting it all done. So big plays that moved over into the next expansion. So while going through Shadowmoon Valley, we learn a lot more about the Shadowmoon clan. And as the Draenor crash landed on the planet of Draenor, they did so because the Naaru were like falling ill. And as the Naaru falls ill, they go to the dark side, the void side, and they need time to recover. So in the sky, there was like a dark star. And early on, the Shadowmoon clan figured out, like, okay, you don't want to mess around with the powers of the dark star, right? Like, mess around with the powers of the void. It's not exactly good for your health. They made it taboo. They made it forbidden. However, Ner'zhul, Stormy, hello there. Ner'zhul, originally one of the big powerhouses, although manipulated amongst the Horde in our timeline, now found himself having to deal with a Garrosh, with a Grommash, who were pressuring him to prove himself worthy of the might of the Iron Horde, right? And so Ner'zhul found himself pressed to embrace the powers of the Darkstar. This was going to be Karabor, by the way. This was going to be the Alliance capital. again, did not happen, but it was going to be. Beautiful skybox and all the good stuff. So throughout the quest line, the powers of the Darkstar are employed by Ner'zhul, and he is just about to wipe out the Draenei and all the opposition. And then alternate Velen, so not our Velen, which raised a lot of confusion amongst the player base, let me tell you, but alternate Velen passes on like a symbol on Yrl's head, and then sacrifices himself in order to cleanse the Darkstar back to its light state. And the passing of the symbol, I always thought like, oh, did he pass on like leadership of the Draenei to Yrl? Like, what's happening here? But the ones who worked on the cutscenes later explained like it was more symbolic, I'm out kind of thing. Like, here's my symbol, I'm out. All right. So that sacrifice made, Ner'zhul and the Shadowmoon clan were defeated. Not everybody amongst the Shadowmoon clan was down what Ner'zhul was doing, but, you know, most of them. And then we followed Ner'zhul into the Shadowmoon burial grounds. Again, here we also have Botani. Beautiful zones, though. Let it be said, the art teams for Draenor zones, insane. But we dealt with Ner'zhul in the Shadowmoon burial ground as like a dungeon boss. Which I've not told the Garrison Fountain, no. Is there a lot of lore there? I will tell it all. But I remember a lot of people being a bit upset that that was the end of Ner'zhul's influence on alternate Draenor. Because Ner'zhul, in our reality, would rise up to become, well, rise up. He would become the Lich King. Like, he would play such a massive role in the story. And in this one, it was over with in leveling and then the dungeon. And it's like, okay, bye, Ner'zhul. What is rather interesting is that this is where we found one of the first hints that Blizzard had not forgotten about Illyria and Threllian. In your garrison, there is an inn that you can build. So one of the cool parts about the garrison is that you can pick what kind of buildings you wanted in there. So if you wanted like a farm or if you wanted to PvP, like there were different buildings you could pick for. And one of them was an inn where random NPCs would show up with quest lines. And one of them was like a hooded elf who asked you to go into Shadowmoon Burial Grounds and find evidence of Illyria Windrunner. But that's weird, right? Like, we're on alternate Draenor. Why would there be evidence of our Illyria Windrunner in the Shadowmoon Burial Grounds? What the heck is happening? But there was. Like, we found like an arrowhead or something like that. And they were like, oh my gosh, they're out there somewhere. I was like, huh. Now later we'd find out that Illyria and Threllian are part of like the Army of the Light, and they are fighting this big ass war in the Twisted Nether and alternate realities and all that. But here we had like one of the first build-ups. Hello, Gul'dan. What you doing? Making evil plans? You're making evil plans? Bet you are. Bet you are. Is anything else I wanted to say? Burial Fields, Darkstar. Also, the Nibblers, which I always thought was going to be way more popular than they actually did. Nobody really cared about the plant creatures, but I like them. They're my favorites. There was also somewhat of a Dragonmaw clan here, but not the actual Dragonmaw clan. There were like two-headed Rylak creatures that were fighting here. Then here we got the Spires of Arak. And in the Spires of Arak, we dealt with the Arakoa storyline. And the Arakoa are very much a storyline connected to Outlands. A story connected to Beyond the Dark Portal. But the Arakoa could use so much more lore. And here they kind of gave a full-on backstory. So the idea is that there is Anzu, Sephiroth, and the sunbird called Raccoon? Hang on. The sunbird called Rukmar. I knew it started with an R. Rukmar. There you go. And what's it called? Cephralis? I'm trying to I think Cephralis was like the Loa snake. There's a place here. Sephek. That's it. Right, Sephek. So, Sephek was like the serpent creature which had a curse. And Anzu sacrificed themselves in order to take care of Sephek, but they got touched by Sephek's curse, and therefore they lost their wings, like they lost their ability to fly. And they created this whole pool, right? But Rukmar was very much like in love with Anzu, and it was like calling out to Anzu, but Anzu did not answer, because Anzu didn't want to show themselves, because they were like, yeah, F that noise. I'm all corrupted and malformed. Nah. So up above, there's this whole Arakoa society with like beautiful wings and whatnot. And these were a new model of the Arakoa than we'd ever seen before. And we learned that amongst Arakoa society, they will sometimes do what is called a dick move amongst bird culture. Basically, if you get like exiled or, you know, punished or whatever, they'll throw you into the pools. They'll throw you into these pools and you'll be turned into an Arakoa. The corrupted variation. Now, it's not all bad. You do get like access to darker powers and shit, but it's pretty bad. So you got like the whole sun situation, and then you got the darker situation going on. And we went in here, and we took care of business of the ones who were in Skyreach. And we joined that one Arakoa with like Percy. I remember that much. And at some point we also embodied Anzu, like the warrior of Anzu, and we kicked some serious Shattered Hand Clan booty, and Kargov Bladefist as well. Yeah. And I think in the Chronicles, as you could tell, it's been a while. In the Chronicles, they continued the storyline, because obviously on Alternate Draenor, we took care of business, and then the storyline kind of ended. Somewhat around the period that the Iron Horde was like offered the demonic blood. And then we come in and then we fight off and we stop all of that. But in our timeline, they took elements from this Alternate Draenor and they made it part of the main storyline. So the reason why we haven't seen this on our Outlands is because I believe the Shattered Hand Clan just wiped them out. In a similar vein, like in Gorgrond, there was like Black Hands, who took care of business. Here we also have a really interesting storyline that takes place. This here is Admiral Taylor's garrison. And just like us, Taylor was lucky enough to get himself a beautiful garrison. They built up buildings, they decided to put down plots, they got a little mine and whatnot. And we found a journal. And in that journal, we realized that Reffion made his way to Alternate Draenor. Even though they didn't really make it part of the storyline. Because you gotta remember, the whole reason why Alternate Draenor happened is because Reffion had foreseen the coming of the Legion, right? So it's really weird that Reffion did not play a part in any of this. Nor did he play a part in Legion itself, for that matter. But he was here. He met up with Taylor, and then Taylor's garrison got betrayed from within. There was like this weird-ass necromantic visitor. Taylor got murdered. And there was quite a bit of mystery being built up here. Unfortunately, that storyline, yeah, it's the little expansion it could. That storyline didn't really massively go anywhere. And I'm kind of, if I remember right, people were like, did you kill off Taylor because you killed off Nazgrim in the Cataclysm? Or in Mist of Pandaria? Because you don't have to kill one for one, right? Like, you could have kept Taylor alive. And now they've resurrected Nazgrim. I'm pretty sure Taylor is still dead. No, Taylor became... It's worse. Taylor became a follower in the garrison. That's even worse. Ah, poor Admiral Taylor, man. Poor guy. So yeah, that is Spires of Arak, where we learn a lot more about the Arakoa history. There was also the Goblin Island bits. Reffion showed up for a little while. Yeah. It's kind of funny, by the way, how little experience you get from exploring after 70. We only have like half a bar. Before this, exploring the world was a lot quicker. A lot more experience. That's alright. So then, leveling-wise, we had one more zone to go, which was the ever-lovely, ever-beautiful Nagrand. And even in our timeline, Nagrand... Yeah, Vera, yeah. Nagrand was a beautiful zone, which I'm don't think they've 100% confirmed, but I kind of want to give it to the Draenei spaceship, Auchindoun, of Jedidar. What do you call it? I'll come by it in a moment. With the Naru inside. I think that kind of held off the corruption that spread over Draenor. Because even in our timeline, Nagrand is still beautiful and green, and it's the place where they kept their sick children as well, which is the reason why in our timeline, Garrosh, who was already born when Grommash went into Azeroth, that's why Garrosh never joined Grommash into Azeroth, because he had like the rat pox, and the rat pox is a disease, ogre design, if I remember right. And the red pox were taken by Gul'dan, combined with some demonic legion power, and turned into the red mists. So this is where, none of their fighters, and they were chilling. And the zone was just absolutely beautiful. There's also the Throne of Elements, which might play a part in it now that I think about it. Throne of Elements is like one of the mightiest elemental places on the entirety of Draenor. And just all in all, as you say, Krull, the zones are just absolutely gorgeous. Absolutely beautiful. In this zone, this is where we learned about Garrosh's history with Kairos and how he actually set up the whole entirety thing of Warlords of Draenor, the Dark Portal turning red, all the good stuff. And in this zone, we dealt more with Cho'Gall's shenanigans. Cho'Gall is connected to the Pale Orcs. And the Pale Orcs, they are connected to the Void and the Old Gods. So in this reality, Cho'Gall is eventually sent out by Gul'dan in order to suck out like the power of the Naru and like turn it to the Darkened State. And Cho'Gall lets the power get to his head and he's like, we don't need you anymore, puny orc. Go away. So Cho'Gall sets out on his own adventures while we were left to deal with whatever happened in his zone. Now don't worry, we would see Cho'Gall again in Mythic High Mall. Where he shows up at the end of the raid as like a special encounter. He's also there at the start for every difficulty in like looking at the gladiators or whatnot. And Cho'Gall is awesome. Now in our reality, Cho'Gall made its way into Azeroth, and they were all about the Hour of Twilight. This was this big ass prophecy that they had learned. Originally, with the Cataclysm, it was like the moment that the old gods would break out of their prisons and rule the world once more. In the case of Cho'Gall and the Pale Orcs, they were more about complete annihilation, destruction of everything, the Hour of Twilight, let void and darkness just take it all. Their clan was not exactly the most sane amongst the bunch, to put it that way. So in Heimal, this is like a last remaining seat of power of the ogres. Because the ogres, once upon a time, really ruled Draenor, but over time would see themselves losing ground to the orcs. Whereas, if you look at the map, there's like a little bit in the lower left corner, which had people wonder if that's going to be like a massive ogre empire. Ogres were very much... In the original timeline, it was very rare to have like two-headed ogres. In this timeline, a little bit more common. And this is then the Draenei Auchindoun, yes, the Draenei spaceship left behind here. In our timeline, the Draenei spaceship was like this massive spiritual site for the orcs, as the spirits of the ancestors were drawn here by the Naru inside. You can imagine that when Velen told them, like, yeah, that's because of the Naru, they did not take too kindly to that. They were like, yeah, but that's our religion. What are you doing? Go away. You nasty, nasty Draenei. But Velen was like, yeah, but I know the truth, though. And they were like, we don't care. Leave us alone. It would also be here where we would find that as Grommash had become the war chief of the Iron Horde, Garrosh had put himself as war chief of the Warsong clan. And he had gotten this position because he had like battled and proven himself, and he had given Grommash detailed information about the future and all the good stuff. And of course, the whole taking all manner of and whatnot. But our Thrall still felt like justice had to be given. Garrosh in charge of the Horde back in our reality. It led to the death of Cairn. It led to a lot of infighting. And again, they were supposed to put Garrosh in trial, but that never happened. So instead, Thrall was like, let's skip the procedure. We don't need a trial. I know the punishments that will fit the crime. I'm going to execute Garrosh Hellscream. And that cutscene is still one of my favorites to this day. where we just could see Garrosh and Thrall going at it, like the Throne of Elements, the place where they met in the original timeline. And just the dialogue that flows between the awesome combat is just sick. Like, both sides is something to be said. Thrall is like, you know, you failed the Horde, you let your ego, your own wishes, your arrogance guide your actions. Whereas Garrosh is like, yeah, but you left me to pick up your pieces. I told you myself, like, don't make me the war chief. And Thrall was like, nah, I'm gonna make you the war chief. It's like, what did you expect? And what's really cool is that there will always be a discussion and debate about Thrall and Garrosh. Like, Thrall cheating in the Makura. I would say, like, ooh, look at the Chronicles Volume 4, where they outright state that Thrall did not cheat. But then I would have to give credit to the Warcraft Chronicle Volume 4, even though that book has, like, a lot of information just wrong. Which is a different discussion altogether. Like, for me, Garrosh knew full well who he challenged. He called him a shaman. To not expect Thrall to use elemental powers is crazy. And there are other rules that were broken amongst the Makura. Like witnesses and whatnot. As well as, again, the Warcraft movie did not help in that regard. Because in the Warcraft movie, they make it a big point that Gul'dan used, like, fel powers. And so the orcs go, oh, Gul'dan cheated. And so when people see Thrall use elemental powers, like, oh, Thrall cheated. And it's like, no, it's not a one-on-one, though, right? But yeah, you know, everybody will have their own opinions on it. And at the end of the day, I don't think it was the point of that confrontation. It was not the point to make Thrall a cheater. The point was that Thrall had to do what had to be done. And while he spoke a big game in that confrontation, with like, no, you chose your own destiny. Thrall, you made me what I am. So fucking good. Taking care of Garrosh would have massive emotional effect on Thrall. Up to the point where in the next expansion he could no longer wield the elements. And so he passed on the Doomhammer to Heroes of Azeroth. Now, in the Shadowlands, apparently a good bit of torture was all that it took to get his elemental powers back. But that's Shadowlands, right? In this moment, still such a good character progression in my opinion. He should not have walked away unscathed from this confrontation. I think that's what really, really worked. Now, I will say, going into Draenor, I mean, I haven't taken care of him. So for me, Garrosh is not here, but on my main character, yes, Garrosh should still not be cleaned up. But what I found disappointing about the Garrosh and Thrall arc is that it's... Well, I had different hopes for it. I hoped that Thrall was going to see more on Garrosh's way. Like, yeah, going for peace is great and all that, but sometimes you need a little bit more of that hardcore Horde setting. And in the case of Garrosh, I'd hoped that he had seen it more in Thrall's way. Like, yeah, you can't just fight your way out of every situation. You need to, you know, negotiate, and sometimes a little bit of water with the wine and all that. Find each other somewhere in the middle. Like, learn that the Orcish Horde of old also wasn't the greatest. And it's just, that didn't really happen. But still, the ending, I remember when all those cutscenes were released in one go. And people were like, can you react to it? I remember seeing Garrosh executed for the first time. Insane. Absolutely insane. It's a really, really, really cool storyline. So yeah, leveling was done. We went into Heimal, took care of businesses there as well. In the background, there was this legendary questline going on. I believe Khadgar hooked us up with a ring. And in essence, it was us trying to stop Gul'dan, the Shadow Council, and the Iron Horde. But what was happening was we were weakening the Iron Horde's position. We were weakening Gromash's position. But in turn, we were strengthening Gul'dan. Gul'dan was making use of our actions in order to once again offer demonic blood to the orcs. And while Gromash, the Iron Will, was unmovable, Kil'jaeden Deadeye accepted the demonic blood. And there was this line about from Gul'dan, he's like, you've seen your destiny, you know what needs to be done. Because Kil'jaeden had like a vision of the future about his moment of his death, I think. But that never really came into play. Like, we just took out Kil'jaeden after drinking demonic blood, because that was the bad thing to do. Like, kind of wonder what that whole vision thing was about then. But yeah, Kil'jaeden accepted demonic blood, but at that point, Garrosh was kind of cheering us on. And that is where a big part of Draenor's story kind of falls flat. Because they make it so that Garrosh all of a sudden turns around and goes like, yeah, Azeroth's champions, go for it, save the planet. And it's like, yeah, but hang on a minute, Garrosh. You can go around and start to point your finger at Gul'dan and be like, ooh, that's the bad guy. But you're the war chief of the Iron Horde. You invaded our realm. We came here to stop you as well. And there was no arc, no story which had Garrosh join our side. Besides us releasing him in the raid for some reason. And then he was on our side fighting with us. It's like, oh, okay. I guess. So, yeah, we go through the final raid. We take care of business. Gul'dan summons our command, which, again, supposedly are our command. I don't know how that works with the time travel. But, you know, Twisted Nether transcends reality. So what I'm guessing is that this our command is the one that we, in our timeline, already defeated with Warcraft 3. And now he has summoned the alternate Draenor in the past. That's how I took it, and then we took care of him. If not, then we messed up the timeline, right? Because then we have killed him in the past, and then he can't show up for Warcraft 3, and that would be a whole mess. So, another thing which they've established is that demons can't properly die unless they're killed within the Twisted Nether. Or places infused with the Fel, right? So, Draenor... So, we killed Kil'jaeden on Argus, a planet infused with the Fel, after blasting through the Twisted Nether. That's all fine and dandy. But for our command, it was going to be a little bit more tricky because Draenor is not infused with the Fel. So what does our command do? In all his glory and brilliance tactician-y wise, he pulls us into the Twisted Nether on Mythic mode. So that's smart. He pulled us into the one place where we can actually kill him. However, that still doesn't fix the problem because he doesn't die in that moment. The cutscene still plays out on Draenor, where he sends Gul'dan back into our reality, and then the light in his eyes goes out. So he still dies on Draenor, even though they gave it like this specific mythic mode. He still doesn't, you know. Yeah, he wasn't in the Nether in the cinematic when he died. No, exactly. So, technically speaking, our command should still be there. But I think that, you know, with the whole ruling of, oh yeah, they die in the Twisted Nether, and then him pulling us into the Twisted Nether, I think they wanted him to die. I think that's more to the point. Because then Kil'jaeden is taken care of, and then Garrosh is imprisoned. It's a storyline that they wanted to finish, right? And then the weird part happens. Which is, we've taken care of the raid. Gul'dan is sent over to Azeroth for the next expansion, right? And then Garrosh turns around and he goes like, Draenor is free! And he's like, yeah, but wait a minute. You don't get to be with the heroes. No. You are the one who started this. Hands behind your back. You're going to go on trial. And it's like, nah, we're just going to let Garrosh be free now. It's like, oh, okay. I guess we're going to let Garrosh go free now. And that's how Draenor ended. Weird. Really, really weird. But, you know, it's the ending for it. We also didn't talk about, by the way, we confront Blackhand here with Yrl and Marad, where Marad sacrificed himself for Yrl, and he leaves her with the line, in the light, we are one. And then Yrl pops her wings and throws a weapon at Durotan, who then attacks Blackhand from behind. Really sick, again, really sick cutscene, really sick fighting scene. But turns out that Yrl took that in the light, we are one a little bit too seriously. Because after Draenor, we go back home. And eventually we get the Magar recruitment scenario. And in essence, we have Eitrigg, the hero, and I think we have like a shard of the Hourglass of Time. Or we get like the help of the Bronze Dragonflight. And we go back to Draenor. Except this time, we sync up the timeline. So now Draenor has spent like 30 years, 20 years cooking. And we get to see what happens to a Garrosh. We get to see what happens to a Earthen and a Yrl and all that. And turns out that Yrl... I really wanted to make that joke, but then I'll have to cut it out of the VOD. Turns... Turns out that Yrl really wanted to give her heart to the people. And so she is now leading the charge with the Naru at her side, with the lights, and things happen on Draenor in which they're kind of like the planet is dying again. And they're kind of blaming each other. The orcs are blaming the Draenei are blaming the orcs. And they're not exactly sure why the planet is dying. But Yrl has decided that it was the orcs. And that they all need to convert into their army of the light. I think there was also part about the Botani rising up again. Either way, Yrl went crazy for Cocoa Puffs. There's also a child of Garrosh. They're not specified to have been called Garrosh, but I like it more to think about it as a Garrosh, which has joined Yrl as a High Exarch. So the child of Garrosh decided to join the light. And Garrosh is like, yeah, I'm holding the line here. Yrl, I'm not joining you. Go away. So we go in there and we're like, okay, Magar, we need your help. Come with us to Azeroth, we'll take you back. And they're like, okay, we'll join you. Garrosh makes the ultimate stand, the ultimate sacrifice. In Chronicles Volume 4, if I remember right, they did confirm that Garrosh actually died. So, yes, music, that actually happened. But we take the Magar with us back to our reality. And the one that's leading them is Gajora. Gajora is the daughter of Durotan and Draka. AKA, Gajora is alternate Thrall. Except that's not how he sees her, because in the more recent short story, we finally learn more about how does Thrall look at Gajora. And turns out that he never knew that she was the daughter of Durotan and Draka. He only found out with the War within that her parents are Durotan and Draka, which I find kind of unbelievable. You're gonna tell me in all that proud Gajora never spoke about her heritage? So yeah, okay. Well, I guess we'll believe it. But Thrall does not see her as alternate Thrall. He sees her as his sister. And, yeah. You're too depressed to care? Aww. Aww. But yeah, he sees her as a sister. And so, he's trying to open her eyes beyond just war and fighting. See, like, okay, your enemy, they're hurting and they're suffering as well. Like, see what you have in common rather than what separates you. Could it be that Thrall was away for most of the time, living on Outlands? Let's see. So, Draenor happens. We come back from Draenor for the expansion Legion. And in Legion, he gives up the Doomhammer. Then after Legion, we go into Battle for Azeroth. At that point, he is chilling in Outlands. But then Sourfang brings him back with his whole we don't get the hide. And I believe it was in Battle for Azeroth where we recruited Gajora and the Magar. Because Sylvanas was still the war chief. I'm pretty sure it was Battle for Azeroth. So, no. Because he didn't get the hide. Yeah, like, son of... Why? Makes it a bit extra weird that he doesn't know. Yeah, like, you're gonna tell me that in all those years, because it's like 7, 8, 10 years, you're gonna tell me that they never had a conversation about their parents. Yeah, my parents, Durotan and Draka, you know, the land of Durotar is called after my dad. Like, you never you never spoke about that? It's like, oh, that's a coincidence. My dad's called Durotan too. And why did Vol'jin make Sylvanas war chief over Sourfang? Because Vol'jin was half dead, and then Muzala whispered in his ears. And then he was like, many will not understand, myself included. But Sylvanas must be the war chief. You must step out of the shadows and lead. So yeah. Manipulations by Muzala, manipulations by the jailer. But to stay on Draenor, for the future of alternate Draenor. So what's interesting is that they have established that if you leave an alternate timeline alone, eventually that timeline should go poof, it should go vanished, and then it's done. But in the case of alternate Draenor, it seems to be more connected, it seems to be more there, and there's more story to be told. Okay, so what I would really like to see is two extremes. I don't like what they've done with Yrl, but okay, you've done this with Yrl, let's go with it. You have a overzealous army of the light. You could combine that with the Arafi Empire. You could combine that with a Thrallion and Zera and all that good stuff. No, Zera is no longer there, but you know what I mean. Like, you combine that and make like a massive army of zealots. Think Scarlet Crusade, but like massive and big and huge in the army. And then on the other side, you got the darkness with like an Illyria and a Zealotov and the Void and like a Dimensions to All Devouring. And then you have Renilush. Then you have a big-ass battle between the Light and the Void. And in the middle, there's us. There's just us. And we get to party with both sides. Because both sides are on the extremes. We just get to help out both sides, depending on what we want to do. So that could be a thing. On the other hand, I don't know, like Yrl has been established as, you know, either you join the light or you're gonna be perished. Can you pull her back now that she killed Grommash? I wouldn't mind seeing it either. Like I said, I find it a big waste for the character of Yrl. Because, you know, it's an interesting, strong character that actually had some really sick development in Draenor. For the life of me, I do not understand why you turned her into a zealot, into somebody who wants to really share her heart with the people. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's a bit weird that. How? What if the whole saga is going to turn out the Void was the good guys all along? Zalatos was right all along. Then why, whenever I get close to them, do their whispers drive me crazy? Then why have they been trying to kill me all this time? Then why do they turn me into faceless ones when I hang out too much with them? What if that's just the Magar point of view and she's an extremist as they see her? Then I wonder, like, how does that line up with killing Grommash, right? There is wiggle room in there, because they haven't defined who was right about Draenor. But then you would turn the Magar into the ones that are wrong, and you already turned the Magar into an allied race, right? They're gonna give you a crazy good time because you're corrupted by the light. Yeah, I mean, I'm more like an organism grown in the world of order. I don't deal well with the Void and the Whispers. Titus will get lonely. Let's do it. Grum deserved to die on Warlords anyways. Bozo did a genocide and he got away scot-free. I still don't understand how he turned around and was like, oh yeah, Draenor is free now. We've done it, everybody. Good job. Good job, everybody. High fives all around. But yeah, that will forevermore be the legacy of Draenor, in my opinion. The expansion that could have been is just massive and insane. And again, I think a lot of the development was for the Garrison, which in turn makes you wonder, like, okay, they once again announced player housing. How far are they in development when it comes to player housing? And is it going to be different than a Garrison? Is it going to be... Like, for me, a Garrison is not... The Garrison was never the problem, in my opinion. For me, what was wrong with the Garrison back in Draenor is that they called it core gameplay. And then we got nothing else to go with it. And that, for me, was the problem. Just being stuck in a Garrison with fuck all to do. If they can make player housing as just a little side thing to do, and just have a game next to it, it'll be perfectly fine. Then I'll be more than happy with a new Garrison. If I can hang up some of my decorations, yeah. The other stuff could wind up anything on a whim. Oh, 100%. Yeah. Both Yordle and the Draenei went like, hold on, Grum. No, well, apparently they worked together for a while. That's the idea, if I remember the books right. But yeah, lovely people, that is Zoval through Alternate Draenor, which means that after Draenor, we did Legion. Oh, take me back. I miss Legion. What a time, not only for the story, but also for the gameplay. But that will be for next time. So thank you very much for watching, YouTube. Okay, bye.